Hello everyone, this is Read with AI. So, this tool, NotebookLM from Google, is getting quite a lot of hype at the moment on the various socials. So I thought I would give it a review myself and say what I think about it. So firstly, let's talk about what it is. So it is a tool that tries to structure your interaction with large language models a bit more, with the purpose of learning from some sources. So I think it's targeted maybe at the student community a bit, or the learning community. And what it lets you do is upload various PDF sources and then interact with them in various ways. So the ways you can interact with them are you can ask them questions. If it lets me click here. Ooh. Once you select a source, it allows you to ask the sources questions. So, what is this paper about? And then when you ask questions, it generates, after a delay, these nice summaries with clickable links, which highlight the bit of the text where it's extracting information for, which is quite cool. I've seen some other tools do that, so WordTune does it. And then the other ways it lets you interact with texts is under this notebook guide option here. It lets you generate these predefined summaries. Interestingly there, it lets me generate them without selecting any sources, so I assume that gets generated by default from all of those sources. And one of the summaries you can also generate is a audio overview of the text. So let me talk through what I think about this. So my first thought, and just quickly, it also allows you to save the summaries it creates and the answers it gives to the notes in this note screen. I'll just demonstrate this here so I can save this to a note. So let's give this a bit of a critique. So the first point I would make is it's cool that Google are doing this, and I think it's an innovative idea, although at the early stages of this AI future. So one other point is that it seems quite scrappy. So you'll see that this stuff here loses highlighting. It's a bit weird having something described as notebook guide contain these various UI actions. Yep. I don't quite think that this is quite thought through, so it's a bit of a shame that there's no structure here. So it's all just kind of flat, whereas I might like some sort of tree structure there. I almost want this to be a free text structure, something like an outliner or a Notion, so that then I can structure this. Like I can't even drag these around. Yep. So that's my first thought. This interface here is quite cool, where I can select different sources and talk to them and then save them, but then I can't, that's not really saved. It doesn't save the history of how I've spoken to things in these notes. I'm not, what I want a reading tool to be is partly a tool for thought, and I'm not sure if it is. I guess I can write queries here. And then, but then I almost want to look at this and then write a note based on what I'm looking at, and then to write a note I need to close it. So I don't really feel like it's a good tool for thought, but it's a start. Another critique I'd have is that the answering of questions can be slow enough that it might be, you're almost tempted to look at the source and skim as you go. This thing here where it's generated key topics, so it's done a topic analysis here, I'm not sure how, and then put it there, is quite cool. Although I'd almost want to see that between sources as well. Yeah, and then with the absence of like a more general purpose note-taking interface, you almost then want to start pulling this information here out of the document and doing it somewhere else. So another thing that's been getting a lot of hype is this audio overview feature. I had a play with that earlier. My thoughts are it's quite entertaining. So there's a bit of pitter-patter between two hosts when they go through things. But at the same time, I felt there wasn't necessarily good overall structure, sort of table of contents or tree-like structure based on the document when it was going through topics. So it was almost meandering or just going through the different topics in the paper in order. There was quite a lot of additional additional information that from outside the document added to the audio overview. So I'm not really sure it was an accurate summary of the text. Yeah. So then, I guess it might be interesting to listen to and then look over what it's generated as a form of priming. What is very interesting is the idea. So this is moving what might be active consumption material to a passive form in an automated fashion, which is quite a cool idea. Yeah. At the moment, well, and another thing it does, I think, is that it adds a fake social component, a fake generated social component to interacting with a topic. So you have this maybe potentially quite dry texts, and then the audio overview that it generates is quite friendly and light. One thing I find myself doing sometimes is when I'm reading through a difficult or unmotivating topic in PDFs, is I will find on YouTube podcasts on a similar topic which seems to give one that motivation or a bit more of a feeling that what you're doing is socially relevant, which is interesting. So that's one thing it might do.
Welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're tackling how college
So here's your friendly NPR style conversation.
You know, all those textbooks they're facing.
It's a big one.
It turns out it's not just about like absorbing information.
I'm quite interested as to how they're doing this below the hood and what the different parts of the thing they generate is. So for example, the host will occasionally go on these narrative descriptions of how the topic relates to her experience. So they've probably included specific prompts to include that narrative structure. So we'll have a model of a podcast there, which is quite interesting. Yeah, so that's that. I sort of thought from the hype on the internet that this was a game-changing tool that will almost swallow a whole section of the learning and note-taking space. And after reviewing this, I don't really think that. So I'm not even sure this is really usable or like preferable to just interacting directly with an LLM or something like PDF AI or similar. But it is interesting, and I think there are some cool features to take from it. So this is cool, being able to select which sources you interact with. The summary tools are quite cool. And the idea of sort of having a reading combined with note format is cool. So I think this style of interface where you generate some notes and put them in somewhere that you can interact with and then structure them and then go back and forth between the sources and notes is quite cool. But I think one needs more of a tool for thought, and if I was doing something like this, which I may do at some stage, I'd really like a more of an outline and note interface here. Cool, but that's that. Hope you find this interesting. Subscribe if you want to hear me yammer more on this topic. And I am on Twitter, which I've linked to here, where I will share my thoughts in public, and if I build stuff, I'll put it there as well. I tend to be quite philosophical there, as you might tell from this podcast. That's Reading with AI, and speak to you later.